have a box. My editor was kind enough to print up samples of my book. So there's a box of samples of my book up here. Before you leave, take one. If you can track me down, I will be at the Harvest House Publishers tent. I can sign these for you if you want. Oh, that's yours. You're getting an actual book tonight, Rebecca. In case you haven't noticed, the size of this podium always creates a problem for me. It's short people problems, right? I can't get up and over it, so I'll try not to tangle myself up in this cord. My husband and I and our 3 sons are here. We're very happy to be here in Tennessee. If you see the boys, stop them. They've been told to mind their manners and practice saying hi to people. It is very humid, so if you see us dripping in sweat, just know in Iowa there's a constant wind. Our sweat dries up. We're not used to drowning in our sweat. So we live on 20 acres in northeast Iowa. We have 7 children, and 2 of our oldest daughters are married. We have 1 grandson, and we've been married for 25 years. We celebrated last month. So on our 20 acres, we have multiple milk cows. A lot of people talk about chicken math. On our farm, we have cow math. They multiplied and multiplied. And one day, one of my children came in and they're like, "Mom, I counted the cows. Do you know we have 9 cows?" And I'm like, "No, we don't. There's no way we have 9 cows." But we actually did at that time, and we have more now. So we try to raise all of our own food. We are not a for-profit homestead on our 20 acres. We are nutrition. That's our goal, is nutrition for the family. Anything extra that we have, we share with our married children or neighbors, and they might leave a donation in the donation box when they come get our extra milk. And honestly, sometimes when it's garden season, I'm begging people to take milk because I don't want to make cheese, I want to be in the garden. So we preserve a lot of our own food because in Iowa, our growing season is short and the winter is long. So when I say we preserve 600 plus quarts of food, it's because we have long winters and we don't like to go to the grocery store. So what I'm going to talk about today is creating a counterculture family. We all know the reason why you don't want to be mainstream culture right now, but I'm going to be speaking to parents and I'm going to give you steps on how to create a family that can swim upstream. And by swimming upstream, if life is a river and everybody else is going the easy route, swimming upstream takes a lot of effort because the more people that are going downstream, the stronger that current gets. So to create a family that can swim upstream takes some intention and thought and effort. Because the more the world, the easier the world has, the more access the world has to our minds, the more we start drifting without even realizing. And when parents start drifting downstream, the children follow. But guess what? When you start swimming upstream, you create a little current of your own, and your children get to follow. Because I grew up on the river, right? When I became a mother, I was like, how did Mom let us go to the river every day? Because, suddenly when you become a mother, you have a whole new set of fears.
Amen.
I'm like, how did my mother just let us go to the river every day? I know a lot about river currents because I grew up swimming. That's how I learned to swim, was in the river currents. So if life is the river, I'm going to give you some very practical tips on creating your own little current to take your family upstream with you. And this is not about homesteading. It's about the hearts of your family. It doesn't matter how much raw milk they drink, and let me tell you, we love our raw milk. But that's not going to save any souls. Raw milk doesn't have any eternal value. It gives you life today, here, physical life, but it doesn't have any eternal value. So if you're familiar with our story, you know that my husband and I grew up in the Old-Order Mennonite culture, which is very similar to the Amish. In 2007, we met somebody that introduced us to having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And we no longer fit in because we were after the presence of the Lord and the peace. And so we left that culture. But guess what? The culture shaped who we are. And when we left that culture and looked at the modern world that we were now part of, because we no longer had to follow the dress code of the Old-Order Mennonite church. We, on the outside, looked like part of the modern world, but we weren't. There's a saying, and I don't know if the rest of you know it, but in the Mennonite and Amish culture, there's a saying that says, you can take the boy out of the Amish, but you can never take the Amish out of the boy. Meaning that the culture that you grow up in, it shapes you. It's who you become. And that becomes the easiest current for you to follow. So the easiest current for me to follow in my river of life is the current of making rules and expecting people to follow them. Because that's the culture I was raised in. You dress a certain way, you do things a certain way. It's a very safe, the culture is very separate from the modern world. So, the current that I want to follow, my default current is not the modern world. My default current is the current of making rules. But here's the thing, rules seldom, if ever, have the power to change the heart. Rules only teach the outward man how to conform. So I have to be very intentional about building relationship with my family, because in the culture I was raised in, relationship is not on the radar. Rules and conforming is. That's what the culture of my childhood was. So I have to be very, very intentional about building relationship with my family, because with relationship, you touch the heart. And when you have your family's heart, everything gets easier. You're able to influence them when you have relationship. So homesteading, the trending movement of homesteading was never on our radar. Like, we didn't know there was such a thing until one day I had a friend, she was sitting with me in the backyard, and we were eating some homemade bread with butter from our cow and fresh strawberry jam. And she was, it's delicious. It's one of the best things you can eat, right? And she's like, you're a true homesteader. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, oh, the hashtag. Here, let me teach you how to use the hashtag. That was the beginning of me finding all of you. I put that hashtag into my Instagram, and my Instagram following just started growing in leaps and bounds. And I'm like, oh, people are hungry for this way of life. But to us, it was simply living. It was the cheapest way we could find to feed our family. We weren't at that time even really worried about nutrition. We were just looking to feed our family in a very economical way. And the way that we knew how to do that was the way that our parents did. That's by having a milk cow, having some laying chickens, things like that. So in 2023, I was approached by a publisher, and they asked me to write a book on homesteading. And as I sat down and started getting my proposal ready, because it has to go, they have to accept what I want to write. And I started writing about the milk cow and the garden, and I'm very passionate about those two things. I love my garden, to the point where my children have to come to the garden and say, hey Mom, it's 1 p.m. Are we gonna have lunch today? I will forget to feed my children because I love to be in my garden. So I started writing all this, and I'm like, but it doesn't matter. Why, in a world that is so busy, would I put the burden of you must grow your own food? That's how you're going to save your family. Why would I write that? In a world that's already so noisy and so busy. So through the writing of that book, I discovered that my true passion is for the heart of the family. Like to give mothers and fathers the freedom to say. Was it a bee? No. Oh, it was coming. To give mothers and fathers the freedom to say, you know what, in this season, I can't have a garden, but I know how to make a difference in my family. To give you the freedom to say, I may never have a milk cow, but I know how to get to the heart of my children. And that is how you're going to influence the next generation. So, through the writing of my book, I discovered that as much as I love the garden and the milk cow, my true passion is for the heart of the family. So one of the questions that I get all the time in my inbox is, how do you do it all? How do you do everything? One of the things I want to tell you is I'm not learning new skills. Most of you are learning new skills, and new skills take up a lot of brain space. When I was learning to make cheese a couple years ago, I literally had to lock everybody out of the kitchen so I could focus. A lot of you are trying to learn 10 new skills this year, and you need all the brain space to learn that new skill. So be kind to yourself. Don't compare yourself to somebody that's lived this lifestyle and cooking from scratch. I can do that while daydreaming. Milking my cow, I daydream through the entire thing. It's not the same. So when you are saying, how do you do it all? I don't. I'm not learning 10 new skills at one time. And what you can't see on YouTube or Instagram, what I can't show you is that my priority, I hope it comes through, but it's not as easy as teaching you how to, make cheese. That's practical. But I can't show as well how my heart is for the family and how I put the emotional needs of my family first. I hope that's the flavor that's in my Instagram and YouTube, but those are things that are not as easy to show. So today, I'm happy to get to stand up here and show this side of what you can't always see on Instagram and YouTube. My primary focus is the heart of my family. If God would ask me to give our whole homestead up, and I practice laying it down, Lord, if you ask me to put this all aside, it's okay. I will still go where you call me, because I know nowhere else have I found the peace that I find when I am obedient to God. So I don't want to live on my homestead if that's not where God wants me to be. And I want to put the hearts of my family first. So every day I get up and I say, Lord, if Instagram and YouTube goes away, it's okay. I will still do what I'm doing because this is what you have called me to do. And my family comes first. Another question that I get often is, how are you ensuring that your children follow the homesteading lifestyle? That's not on our radar. It's not our priority. The homesteading lifestyle is our lifestyle, but they don't have to live like that. Will I be happy to share my raw milk and chicken? I do say, if you come help butcher chickens, you can fill your freezer with chicken. And listen, that grandson shows up, and I don't care what they do or don't do, I'm taking eggs and milk for him to eat. The lines get a little blurred when it comes to the grandchildren. You can have all the milk you want. Sure, I'll buy another cow so you can have more milk. But one of the moments in our life, in my husband and my life, that God used to help teach us that it's not about having children do exactly how we want them to do was when we left the Old-Order Mennonite culture, we had to choose between following where we felt God, where we knew God was leading us, and pleasing our parents. And I don't ever want my children to be put in that position where they have to choose between pleasing me and following God for God's call for their life. So it is not about homesteading for us. We have a daughter and a son-in-law that live in an apartment, and they shop at the supermarket. But guess what? They are teaching at a Bible school. That is where they felt God was calling them, and we are very, very proud of them. When they come home, which they're actually at our house right now, drinking raw milk and eating pastured eggs and anything else they can find in the freezer, that's okay. They need to follow God. And guess what? Their goal is long-term overseas missions. And they came to us and they told us. And of course my heart, the mother in me, my heart broke. Because I'm like, there's going to be grandbabies across an ocean. This is not, and anyway, so, but of course we gave them our blessing. And a couple weeks later, my son-in-law came to me and he said, I know this is really hard to you. And I sat him down and I said, do not take for a moment my sadness as lack of support. My sadness is simply personal and selfish. We support you 100%. But just know that I'm going to be sad because I really like to see you every day. So it's not, and I personally was very thankful because my husband and I always said to each other, we don't want our children to have to choose between pleasing us and following God, right? There's one thing to say it, then it's another thing to actually live it. And you have to know that if God puts a conviction like that on your heart, just wait a little, you're going to get a chance to live out that conviction. I've seen it happen over and over. And so I'm thankful for the chance to actually live out that conviction and change the next generation little by little. So for us, it's not about if they homestead or not. That is not one way to please us. But do we support them if they say we're going to buy 3 acres and we're going to buy some chickens? Absolutely. I even say I'm going to put some eggs in the incubator for you right now. So in a world where we are bombarded by a culture that knocks on not only doors of adults, but the doors of our children's minds, you have to, swimming against the current when you have teenagers, that's the hardest going. And also, here's the other thing. If you plan to swim against the current with the culture, the current of the current culture, and you've not yet started your family, I'm going to give you a bit of advice. Have a lot of children in a short amount of time because they create their own current. It's much harder to create a counterculture family if you have one teenager. So if you're at the stage where you've not yet started your family, but you want to create a counterculture family, the best thing to do is give them a lot of siblings. Because my 3 little boys, our 3 little boys are, well, here's the other thing. They are the tail end of a family. They live in an adult world, right? So all the work that we did with their older siblings, creating a counterculture and putting our foot down and saying, no video games, you can't have this app, you can't have a phone. We were terrible parents. In their eyes, right? Because we didn't allow them to have those things. But now, we have adult children, and they married wonderful spouses. So those 2 counterculture adult children married counterculture adults, and now that is creating a whole new current. And the 3 little boys, they don't care what their friends are doing. It is common knowledge that we do not have video games in our house, right? It's common knowledge. Their older siblings had to do the same thing, and they live in a much different world than their older siblings did, just because they sit at the family dining room table and the conversation is adult. But it's not without its stress moments when your 9-year-old comes and says, Mom, what is a vasectomy? That's the adult world that they live in. Or, Mom, what did the girls mean when they said liposuction? Those are just some of the things that our older children, they never heard the words because they didn't live in an adult world. But I'm saying it's the hardest work with your older children. Our children span 16 years from the oldest to the youngest. So while I had a newborn, I was also a first-time mom to teenage daughters, right? Those were the hard years. Swimming upstream, it felt like I was all by myself. But that's what it's going to feel like when you're creating a counterculture family. So, how do you create a counterculture family? The number one thing is you build relationship. It's through relationship that people desire to be close to you. And when they're close to you, you influence them. So how do you build relationship with your family? The number one way relationships are built, shared experiences. And I'm not talking about big Disney vacations. I'm talking about the kind of shared experiences that nobody remembers because they happen, they're mundane, they happen every day. And they're not these big, flashy moments. It's just the sitting at the dinner table, eating together, day after day after day. That is how you create a counterculture family. That is where you speak, and no phones, no screens. You're speaking face to face. You don't always have to speak. Sometimes it's quiet. Oftentimes it's quiet because my boys are, consuming food, and he who eats fastest gets most when you have multiple boys at the table, right? But it is in those mundane moments that relationship is built. When we milk our cows, one of the main reasons we don't use a milking machine is I want to sit opposite the cow with one of my children. They milk on one side, I'll milk on the other, because shared experiences is how you build relationship. And your children are not aware of this, and they're not even focused on this. They could care less. It's your job to create these moments that build relationship. Whatever it is, but I tell you, eating meals together, that is one of the fastest ways to build relationship. And I say our family starts unraveling at the seams when we don't eat meals together. In the culture that I grew up in, you set the table, breakfast, dinner, and supper. And we didn't eat until everybody was there. And even though I can't say, oh, I remember that one meal that, that we had this or that. No, because there's so many of them, it just creates relationship. And my sisters, I have 5 sisters. We spend a lot of time together as a little girl band. And they are my favorite people, no matter what church we go to, no matter our differences in belief, or differences in dress and the way we dress, I know without a doubt that I can call on them and they will have my back no matter what. And some of you know that we have 2 adopted children, and then we had a surprise baby. We adopted 2, and then we had a surprise baby. And I had a very long recovery from that surprise birth. And while I sat on that couch and watched, I have now had 3 little boys, and they were all added to our family in 2 short years. So it was life-changing, right? And God really started refining my priorities with the family, because I'm like, I was not yet 40 when our surprise baby was born, but for some reason, because I had a near-death experience giving birth to him, I was like, I'm not going to be here for as long of their life as I am with their older siblings, right? So they're going to have to live without me longer than my older siblings. And I don't know why this was so much on my mind, but very likely because I almost died in the delivery room. So I set out helping. I was like, okay, they're going to have each other, these 3 little boys. They don't share any DNA, nothing. They're all from, completely different families. So we're going to work on relationship. And God used that experience to refine my priorities, and also to set the family culture of we don't speak those words to each other. And I started giving my children the words to say to help build relationship. Instead of throwing punches, they still punch each other. But when they come to me for help, I'll say, okay, well, did you try saying, I don't like when you do that? Anyway, I'm getting off topic. I'm going to speak about, tomorrow I'm speaking on childhood chores, building character through childhood chores, and I'll talk some more about that. But today, I'm going to talk about things that, prioritizing your days to make relationships number 1 in your home. So the way I started prioritizing my time when I was on the couch and I had 3 little boys and teenage daughters and 3 teen children, emotional needs are number 1 priority. Every time an emotional need comes up, that is the priority. It doesn't mean that I go give everybody a hug and a kiss and say, okay, now I've met your emotional needs, I can move on. So in my priority list is emotional needs, nutritional needs, and then housekeeping. Housekeeping is at the bottom. But meeting the emotional needs of your family first looks like creating emotionally mature children. And let me tell you, when you see emotionally mature children beside their peers, you're going to notice. You are going to notice the difference. Emotionally mature children. Here, I was listening to Joel Salatin, and I didn't know what words to use for this, but he used it, so I'm going to use it. I thought it was a little harsh, but he said, this culture worships children. And I'm in the process of writing a blog post, and he may have given me the confidence to just post it. Because in that blog post, I'm writing, we treat our children as if they're going to be children for the next 30 years. It's not so. They're going to be adults, and you have this much time to prepare them to be the kind of adults that God needs for His community. They are not supposed to act like children until they're 30. Let them be little, yes. But don't forget that they're going to grow up to be adults. And what kind of adults do you want them to be? It starts by meeting their emotional needs when they're little. Doesn't mean coddling them. And listen, when you have babies, those emotional needs can consume your whole day. You might not have time for a milk cow. That's okay. I did not have time for a milk cow for probably the first 15 to 18 years of my parenting career. My husband works full-time, so it would have only been me. But those are, and guess what? That's the time where you're meeting all the emotional needs. And now, with our youngest being 9, yes, he's 9. With our youngest being 9, suddenly the emotional needs look a whole lot different, because you can meet their emotional needs while you're milking a cow with them, or while you're washing dishes. So it all starts blending together, and so nutritional needs are second. All of our homestead chores fall under nutritional needs for the family. But as long as you have emotional needs of babies and toddlers, you don't have to put the garden first or the animals first. The emotional needs, because I promise you, if you put the emotional needs of your babies and toddlers first now, it's not going to be long until they are emotionally mature enough to understand that mom's going to go milk the cow and I need to just wait a little bit. That's what emotionally mature children look like. And I promise you, it's probably going to happen faster than you want it to happen. I don't know, why are we like that way as parents? As moms, we hold that baby and we're like, oh, if only he would sit in the stroller without fussing, I could milk this cow. And then the minute they're old enough to help milk the cow, you're like, oh, I wish he was a baby and would sit in the stroller. Like, why are we that way? Because I promise it's going to happen faster than you think. So when we left the Mennonite culture, we were told, and I know this is a fear tactic, we were told that our children would be lost to the world. And it struck fear in my heart. I didn't want to lose my children to the world. But I know that now that it was a fear tactic and it was meant to keep us where they wanted us, where our family was comfortable with us being. And at the time, we only had 2 children. But we studied the modern world. We studied the way of raising children, and that's where we first learned that the modern world is obsessed with keeping children babies. And not, like in the Mennonite culture, you grow up fast. Like you're milking a cow on your own at 10 years old. It's a complete different culture. But the beauty of leaving one culture and trying to fit in with another is nobody expects you to conform. They just know that you're different, right? So in that freedom, we were able to pick up bits and pieces of both cultures and decide what worked for our family. Nobody expected us to fit in. Like, we didn't fit in with the Mennonite culture anymore because I wore pants and cut my hair. You're not accepted when you do that. And we were very different from the modern world. Very, very different. We sold our horse and buggy and used that $2,000 to buy us a used minivan. There's not very many people out there that have that kind of experience. We didn't fit in. And we got very comfortable with swimming upstream. Okay, so I'm going to talk about building your family culture. So culture is built with three things. Let's see if I can find the slide. Sorry, I got all out of order. I didn't like the way I set up my slides in order, and this proves Okay, what is counterculture? A movement that opposes the dominant values and norms of society. Your counterculture movement is going to be your family culture. You're going to create a family culture in your home, and you're not going to do that by sitting on the bleachers while your children are at one sporting event after another. Guess who's going to create the culture for you? That coach and the teammates. You don't get to create family culture by sitting on bleachers. Now, I'm not saying that it's all wrong. We allow our children to try a sport, and I hold them off as long as I can. And I remember one time our oldest son wanted to try to play football for the public school, and he was adamant about it. You know, they all go through that stage where they think they're going to be NFL stars or NBA stars. It was that stage. And I knew that it would come to an end. I knew that brain development would take place, and he would see the slim likelihood of him making it to an NFL Super Bowl. But we indulged him and we signed him up, and he had to go get a physical, right? And while he was getting a physical, the doctor put him through this exercise, and it was our family doctor. This was before COVID. And he had to do like a duck walk. And the doctor said, I've done dozens of physicals for middle school boys this week, and you're the first boy that can do the duck walk. And I'm like, what? Tell me more. And he said, today's middle school boys have no core strength because they sit around and play video games. And he said, here's the funny thing, without core strength, these boys' brains do not develop the way they should. He said boys need to grow a lot of muscle, and especially in their core, because their core strength is what triggers all the other muscles to develop. Because without a lot of muscle, they don't get enough hormone flooding the brain to help them properly develop into men. So this doctor knew our family. So he said, let me guess, you're throwing down hay bales and riding bikes. And I said, yes, and there's no video games in our house. I don't know where I was going. That was a rabbit trail. Oh, influence. I started saying you cannot influence your children by sitting on the bleachers. You do not create a counterculture family by sitting on the sidelines. But I have friends whose children are in every sport, and I look at my boys and I say, if I did not have a chicken house to muck out and cows to milk and rotational grazing for them to move, I would probably sign them up for a sport that makes them good and tired. But guess what? Our two adopted sons are born runners. I didn't know that my German blood and my husband's German blood, I did not know that we are not runners until I met our adopted sons. And at 2 years old, they're just running, and I'm like, oh, that's what runners look like. So when the weather's nice in the wintertime and they start getting buggy, I say, all right, you're running to that tree up there. It's like a mile. You're going to run and run back. That's the sports that I engage in with them. But like I said, I am not, they need to work hard. Boys especially need to work hard. They need to work hard almost as much as girls need something to be creative with. And my boys, they have to work hard. That is how I get them to burn off their energy, but I still am influencing their lives. So counterculture movement is your family culture. It's the same as regional cultures. Language, beliefs, ideas, and traditions. My primary language is Pennsylvania Dutch, and our children all understand Pennsylvania Dutch. They don't willingly speak it because they say it doesn't sound right, they don't have the accent. But the language, not only your spoken language, but the language you use with each other, that becomes your family culture. A language of kindness and grace. If your mom was a yeller, you were probably working really, really hard to not make that the culture of your family. It takes intention. It takes a lot of intention to create a culture that your default culture is that of your own childhood. That's what comes easiest and most natural to you. Just the same as making rules and expecting people to follow them is my default. But that's the fastest way to get things done. I've realized in our home that if I make rules and I discipline people into following them, it takes a mere week to get our home running smoothly. But that's not my goal. My goal is to get to the heart of the child. Relationships are the long-term goal of our family. So relationships, they change people little by little. Now there is times when we revert to using rules, and it's usually when we're chasing cows or loading pigs or something like that. You stand here, do not let go of this gate, or there will be consequences. Consequences like, the cows run over you or something like that. There is a time and place for rules and consequences, but most of all, our goal is long-term relationships, and you're not going to see the payoff until you have adult children. And then guess what? When the next generation comes along and you start seeing the difference that you made by making relationship a priority, and you see the way your children start parenting, then only can you say, oh, all that hard work I did, it made a difference. Slowly but surely, that's how you're going to leave a legacy of relationship. Because it's through relationship that people want to be close to us, and when they're close to us, you get to influence them. And what greater gift to give to our children than to know and love Jesus Christ. You see it all over the world if you start paying attention. We have adult children in the house and teenage children, so Elon Musk gets brought up a lot. And so Elon Musk, this is a conversation I hear at our family dinner table, right? Elon Musk sold everything he has and lives in a tiny house. Tom Brady won Super Bowl after Super Bowl and still is looking to do like a darkness retreat or something. I don't know. These are conversations I overhear. And I'm left thinking, it's because they're searching for something. It doesn't matter if you have all the riches in the world, or, I don't know, does he have a dozen Super Bowl rings? The only thing that satisfies the human heart is the one who created it. And when we can give our children that gift of knowing that it doesn't matter what car you drive, it doesn't matter who your friends are, who you know or don't know, the only thing that's ever going to bring you true peace is knowing and loving your Creator. And when you build relationship with your children, they are close enough to absorb that knowledge from you. You're of course going to say it. I say it at the dinner table when I hear them talk about Elon Musk. I'm like, and I don't know the status of his salvation, but I'm just going to throw this out there to my family. Do you think maybe he's searching for peace? We all know where we find true peace, right? The family dinner table is one of my absolute favorite ways to build family culture. One tradition that we have is Friday night is family dinner. And when our children were old enough to get jobs, I was like, well, you can't work Friday nights. That's family dinner. And so when our son-in-law came on the scene, I had to make a rule, and I'm like, I don't mind if you work late 1 or 2 Friday nights in a year. Friday night is family dinner. We want you to be here. I'm of course not, I say it with a smile, but inside I'm like, you're the first son-in-law. If you start setting this trend of, I can show up when I want, because we get to influence them at family dinner. We sit around, we don't rush away to chores. We sit around and there's conversations that happen. And years ago, it was my husband and I directing the conversation, and it felt kind of dull. But now, we have enough adults at our family dinner table. It's very entertaining, and nobody wants to get up and do dishes. And it's beautiful, and I couldn't have dreamt it to turn out this way. When we first started having family dinner, here's the other reason we do family dinner. It makes up for all the sandwiches and soup I feed them during the week. Family dinner is when I make things special, and I make the things that they really want me to make. So, family culture looks like the language you use, language of grace and kindness, with scripture included. It looks like your belief system. It looks like ideas and traditions. This is Friday night family dinner. That's our weekly tradition that everybody participates in. But there's other ideas and traditions that are just everyday, that the kids don't even really notice, but I'm conscious of them. But I think language is probably one of the biggest ways you can start changing your culture, in your family culture, is by using a language of grace and love and acceptance. We don't talk that way. We don't say, I hate you. I'm sorry. Those are not, you can use other words. You can say, I don't feel like being with you right now. That's a language of grace. But I hate you. You're gonna sit somewhere in timeout. We're gonna have a conversation. Family time is sacred and needs to be protected from the influence of the world. Whatever your family is watching on their screens, you can't compete with that. So the longer you can hold off giving your children screens, the better it's going to be. You cannot compete with $1 million budget for stealing your child's attention. And you know what? Here's the bottom line for me. When I get tempted to just allow them to, it would be easier, right? Who is concerned about my children's hearts? Nobody that creates an app is concerned about much more than profit in their pocket. I am the one in charge of protecting my children's hearts for as long as I can. You absolutely cannot compete against $1 million budget with your idea of let's wash dishes together and build relationship. You can't compete with that. So tomorrow I'm going to talk a lot about washing dishes and doing chores and how to build character in your children by getting them to do chores. But today I'm telling you, building those positive shared experiences is how you are going to change the culture of your family. And bad relationships are still relationships. They just have a much higher concentration of bad experiences. And guess what? Nobody willingly goes back to a place where they had a bad experience. We are right now working on making hog loading a positive experience. Because my children's body language tells me that they haven't previously had a good experience and they don't want to repeat this. And I'm like, well, do you want to eat grocery store bacon? No, well then we must load these hogs. The other idea that I had is for them to go watch the hog butchering demonstration this morning and just learn how to do it themselves. Then we wouldn't have to.
They were there.
The boys were there? That's awesome, I'm glad. One of the reasons we don't butcher our hogs on farm is my husband grew up butchering all their own meat. He doesn't want to repeat that. Apparently he did not have a good experience. But also he works full-time, so he would have to take time off of work, and we have a Mennonite butcher shop in our area, and he does a great job. So loading hogs, my children's body language, and they're defeated before we even start, because you know what? I can't keep it positive when the hogs are not going where they're supposed to. I end up losing my cool and yelling. But that's just an example of something that I can tell that we're working on. And this last time we loaded out hogs, it went much, much better, and I'm proud to say I did not lose my cool. The children did. They were yelling at each other and blaming each other for why the hog didn't go where it was supposed to go. And if you have experience with hogs, you just know they are, it can go anyway. But I did not lose my cool. It took us a lot longer than it should have, but we got the hogs to the butcher shop. But those are the kinds of things to think about when you're out there. You are building relationship by creating positive shared experiences. They don't have to be big moments, big celebratory moments. You can build relationship while you're weeding. You just have to keep it positive. And it is really hard to keep it positive when you have 3 children that are all whining and complaining. You can't override that. You know what you do? You send 2 to do something else, and you work with 1. I cannot override the 3 little boys, and if they start whining and complaining, my voice doesn't mean a whole lot, because they're feeding off of each other. So if you have children that are close in age, sometimes the way to create a positive experience is to separate them, because they will feed energy off of each other more than they will feed off of you. So that's one of the big things I had to learn with the 3 little boys, is separating them helped me create a positive experience. And they, like weeding, I mean, how positive can you make weeding the garden when it's 80 degrees outside? But you can still influence the conversation. You still have that influence. So family relationships are important and should be prioritized over screens. When you're prioritizing family, like our family dinner, no screens, no phones. And it takes quite a bit of work, because you can, there's enough of adults at the table that if 1 or 2 teenagers gets their phone out, it kind of spreads. Have you seen that happen? Have you seen the meme that says when mom lays down her phone, everybody better lay down their phone? But it's like a virus, it just spreads. Somebody picks up their phone, and soon there's 3 or 4 other people picking up their phone. And I can't compete with that. I don't care what conversation I bring up, I cannot. It has to be physical and intentional for people to lay down their phones and say they're going to be present. And we need to use that dialogue with our teenagers when we allow them to have screens. Is we need to be intentional about how addictive it is, and how to work against it. We can't just expect to say, okay, you're now going to have a phone, this is your parental controls we have on it. We have to begin the dialogue of addiction. And when you lay it down, you are saying, I value relationship. Okay, I talked about traditions. Okay, here's one thing to remember. You are the only one conscious about the family culture that you are creating. None of your children are they're not going to desire it, because it's going to feel hard. And one of the things that we told our children is when they started begging us for Snapchat, because all their friends had Snapchat. And we were, I'm the only one that doesn't have it. Just because you don't fit in doesn't mean you are not loved. And we say that over and over and over. And guess what happens? Our younger sons, they already know that, because they've heard us say it over and over. But it's really, really hard to raise counterculture teenagers. It's easy when they're in your home and you're influencing them, and they're little, and you're still changing their diapers and you're packing their lunches and things like that. But when they get teenagers and they start seeing their peers, that's when it's hard to swim upstream. It's very, very hard. And if you are there right now, just know that when you get through it, you will be so happy. You will be so happy to have young adults. And listen, if you are not thinking that children are going to be children for 30 years, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a 17 or 18-year-old son or daughter that seems to be a whole decade older than her peers. And that's not a bad thing in today's world. Our 15 and 17-year-old children are at home right now. They are running the entire homestead on their own. We have a heifer. If you know what a heifer is, it's a first-time mom. She had a calf last week, and it was an answer to prayer because I looked at her and I'm like, I think this heifer's going to have her baby when we're in Tennessee. And although my teenagers have a lot of farm experience, they don't have any experience with a first-time heifer. And things can go crazy with a first-time heifer. She's never been milked or anything. She doesn't know. And this one's been on pasture. She's never even been inside the barn. So I prayed hard. And guess what? God brought her baby a week before we left. And she's a wonderful milk cow. She came inside the barn. Of course, she followed her calf. We carried the calf inside. She came inside. And I talked with Hadassah last night, and she said, I really like this cow. She does exactly what I want her to do. And I thought to myself, no, I really, really like you. You do exactly what I expected you to do. It was through text message, and so I left it at that, but I will let her know how proud I am. She has 100 animals, and I say she because our son works full-time on a construction crew, so he's only there early in the morning and late at night to help with the, filling the water and things like that. She has over 100 animals to take care of, and it added up fast because last week we got a shipment of 50 baby chicks from McMurray Hatchery. So she has a lot of animals to take care of, but that's why I meant to say, your teenagers are going to seem to be a decade older than their peers that had been allowed to swim effortlessly or float effortlessly downstream. When you create a counterculture of instilling character and work ethic into your children, you're going to have 17-year-olds that are like men. And they think and reason well. Their frontal lobe is not fully developed, so I take that back. But they are going to seem older than their peers. You can start seeing it when they're 8, 9, 10, because you have expected them to grow up and not allowed them to indulge in childhood. So it's easy to keep outside influences away when your children are little. And as parents, you still have the primary influence in their lives. But sooner or later, you're going to have to trust that they're going to go out there and make their own mistakes. And you're going to have to trust that the culture you created is going to guide them in making their decisions. I think as a parent, one of the hardest stages for me was when those teenagers want to spread their wings, and you just have to trust that they're going to have to make their own mistakes, and it's okay. It's okay for them to make mistakes. A lot of children learn best by making their own mistakes. When they first learn to drive, you can tell them all you want. You know what the speed limit is, right? But some of them are going to have to get pulled over speeding at 16 years old and lose their license before that lesson sinks in. It's okay. You can't be with them every time they get in the car to tell them. That's been one of the hardest stages for me, is to just go to bed and pray and be like, Lord, if they have to learn this, then I pray that you protect them while they're learning their lesson. But yes, Lord, you are allowed to teach my children what they need to learn, because I can't be there all the time. When they're little, I can be there and I can help, but then once they start spreading their wings, It's a whole other level. It takes your prayer life to a whole new level.
Amen.
Okay, I don't know what time it is, 11:30. I have 15 minutes, thank you. So one of the other things that is going to happen when you raise your children to be counterculture is you're going to see them stand on their own 2 feet while their peers float by them downstream effortlessly. And you're going to raise children that can stand for what they believe in when the culture around them is rushing. Because guess what? You've paved the way, you've swam upstream, so there's a bit of a draw in the water, and you've taught them that they can do hard things. You've taught them that just because they don't fit in doesn't mean they're not loved. Okay, I'm going to leave you with a couple things to remember. Relationships are prime. If you only write one thing down from this, write this. Relationships are primarily built on shared experiences. And then in parentheses, put positive. So that you remember bad experiences just create bad relationships. Having a family dinner table, you write this down too. If you don't know where to start with a family dinner table. And if it feels awkward at first, that just shows you that it was necessary. If conversation feels awkward because people don't know how to interact with each other without their screens, it just shows you how necessary it was. Let it feel awkward. Think about things to talk about, but start having as many family dinners a week as you can. And guess what? Sit down and have breakfast together. Sit down and have lunch together. And what that means is you just sit and you eat together. And one of the reasons I now understand why in the Mennonite culture they set a table, they put everything on that you might need for that meal, is because everybody stays sitting. When everything is on the table that you need, everybody can stay sitting. Nothing disrupts a meal. For me, my ideas of what a meal should be like is when somebody's getting up to get something. So that's one of the reasons I believe in the Mennonite culture, my mom, because there's 9 children at the table. It's going to be chaos if everybody's getting up to get their own sauce and their... So setting a table means everybody gets to sit. When we have family dinner, we put everything on the table. And then nobody has to get up to get anything. And we have uninterrupted time. Because when somebody has to get up to get their special sauce or ice in their cup, it disrupts the flow of conversation and building relationship. So if you need a place to start there. Choose the mundane, simple moments in large concentration rather than the grand moments or vacation. Try to have a concentration of a lot of mundane moments, like every day after breakfast we wash dishes and you help me. That's not asking too much from a 6-year-old. They can rinse the dishes because you're going to build a large concentration of those mundane moments. And I promise I'm going to talk more about chores tomorrow. Relationships are built on shared experiences, and remember, it's through our own relationship with Jesus Christ that we influence the next generation for their own relationship. Because through relationship, people desire to be close to us, and when they're close to us, we get to influence them. Never stop seeking a relationship, number 1 with God, and then with your children and your loved ones. And you know how to actively build those relationships. Check each action of yours and ask, does this build relationship or does this hinder relationship? It's a very simple filter to build into your brain as a mother or a father. Is what I am doing building relationship or hindering relationship? There's only 2 ways. Okay. That's the end of my notes. Don't forget to grab a sample copy I will be at booth 112. And don't forget, I'd love to have coffee in the garden with you tomorrow morning. I have about 3 dozen of my coffee in the garden mugs that I'm going to be handing out. Thank you everybody for coming.